Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today's episode is about improving your interior, your home lighting environment to optimize your health and your performance. We all know how important lighting is, and we know that getting outside is super important. But at the end of the day, we all have to spend time indoors to some degree, and managing those light sources is critical for our health. So my guest is Talia Ram. She is the resident wellness lighting expert at a company called Lumiram, which has been around for decades. It's actually her family business. And she herself was a meditation and yoga teacher for 10 years. And finally, she decided she was going to join the family business and join in on this communication to the world of how important lighting is and what solutions they've come up with to help us all. It's a great discussion. I learned a ton, and definitely we're moving beyond even just wearing blue blockers or using red light. This is really about your day to day and making your environment healthier and functional at the same time. So if you decide to go shopping after you've listened to this episode, you can go to healthlighting.com and use discount code NAT15, and that will save you 15% off your entire purchase. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the comments, the questions. Thank you for reaching out. Thank you for the reviews. I'm so grateful for you guys. You make it possible for me to do what I love as a job when it's not a job. So before we jump into the episode, of course, we're going to have a word from one of our sponsors, super quick, and then you're off to the races. Enjoy. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the podcast, Talia. It is such a pleasure to meet you today.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, Natalie, for having me.
Yeah, well, this is such a great topic. We're often in the biohacking space. We're often, talking about supplements and gizmos, and I don't want to discredit anything by calling it a gizmo, but we're talking about health tech, and we often don't pay enough attention to the basics. And I definitely put light into a basic that is so critical to every aspect of our health and our performance. So I'm really excited for this conversation.
Definitely. And you started off as it should be. Lighting is a basic, and that's what we're going to talk about.
I know, I'm so excited. But first, we're going to talk about you, because we always talk about the guest first. And, as I said to you before, how did you come to this space? Like, what brought you to lighting as a solution for health? And
so it's quite interesting. My background is in yoga, holistic health, meditation, and sound healing, actually.
Nice.
And I recently got involved. I'm actually the daughter of the founders of Lumiram. So we've been around for quite some time, starting in Europe in 1959 and then in the States in 78. And so I just recently came on, and really the biggest intersect really is sound and light. And how they are related. And we'll kind of get into that. But the whole concept of full spectrum light is the same thing as having the concept of full spectrum sound. So nice. Yeah, that's not really spoken about a lot or very well understood. So it was quite interesting to kind of get involved and bring in my knowledge of sound and my knowledge of light just from being involved since I was so young, just being aware of lighting. It wasn't really a choice. It was just no around me. And just, bringing it full circle, bringing it all together. It's a really exciting time also as we're becoming more aware of the effects that our light has on us. As biohackers, we're aware of nutrition and hydration, exercise, and, blue light is a topic. Blue light is definitely a topic, but lighting in general isn't really, which I find quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is in some circles. I think a part of it is that people are a little bit overwhelmed by it, right? I think that, you know what I mean? Like, I live in a great big house, and it's an old house. And so the wiring's not the best necessarily. Like I was actually talking about this in a recent previous episode that I recorded, which is that I was doing something in my Vitamix one day in my kitchen, and I decided, oh, this will be cool if I shoot it as a slow motion video. And I was horrified to realize you know what I'm going to say,
Yeah.
the flicker.
Yeah.
The flicker from we have pot lights in the kitchen, which we previously had really big problems with because they kept burning out all the time, which an electrician had said to us, oh, it had to do with our electrical supply coming into the room. But now we've solved that problem, but they're LED bulbs, I guess, and it's invisible to the naked eye. But as soon as you slow down as soon as I slowed down the shot, you could see this crazy flicker happening with the lighting. And I was like, oh man, that can't be good.
It's crazy, everything that's not seen to the naked eye, that everything is just being taken in by the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. And the brain in this case, right? Because the eyes are an extension of your brain, and this, the light coming in through the eyes it's in many ways, it's nothing more than information.
That's all it is.
The brain.
Yeah, it's the pathway to the brain.
So I'm curious about the founders of the company in a bit. Like, were they also aware of the issues around light quality, or did the company itself evolve to become more robust kind of in this space with time? Because usually lighting companies are, I don't know, like fixtures and like, yeah. I don't know, or making energy efficient bulbs, or the focus is very different typically than, oh, we're going to make sure that you have access to the full spectrum of the rainbow, or that, your lighting doesn't disrupt your sleep, or whatever the case might be. That's not, even now, there's a few bulbs out there, but it's still very new. Like I've been looking for a teeny tiny little red bulb for my salt lamp.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, for like 2 years. I can't find one anywhere.
There's so many types. Yeah. But I mean, to answer the question, the company has been around for so long. So back then LEDs weren't a thing.
Yeah.
So incandescents really were just a general type of light bulb. So the inspiration, what we do is really, our brand that we're known for is Chromolux, which is the original neodymium glass light source. And we'll get into what neodymium is. And
yes, you promised.
I did promise. It's a very interesting sounding name, so we don't want to leave people hanging there. But yeah, it was developed in Finland, as you mentioned. Is interesting because Finland, for most of the winter months, for quite a long time, doesn't have any sunlight. Mm-hmm. So the concept actually for this light bulb using neodymium, there was a very similar type of technology that dermatologists were using in Finland, and I'm sure all over Scandinavia, but specifically what my father knew about were those in Finland using this type of lighting on their patient's skin to almost like see it as if it were under a magnifying glass. So neodymium, what it does is the light passes through this lens, mm-hmm. and it actually enhances contrast, it enhances colors. So in this context, you would actually be able to see the pores very clearly. You'd be able to see the veins and the capillaries and see any, changes in texture or color.
Oh, interesting.
So they were able to detect if there are any issues in the skin, they would be more easily able to detect it, kind of as if you were under natural sunlight, which they didn't have.
Right.
So it was kind of an interesting moment. We're using this in a lab setting. What would happen if you brought that into the home? Because mm-hmm. it's enhancing contrast, it's enhancing colors, specifically the blues and the reds.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting because this is a little known thing, but the human eye, or the brain actually, so we have the rods, we have the cones as our visual photoreceptors in the eye, and the cones are responsible for daylight vision and the basically 3 wavelengths of color. So we have the yellow/green, the red, and the blue, and the human brain is actually most sensitive to yellow-green.
Interesting.
It's not a very well-known thing. Yellow-green, and specifically it's 555 nanometers. So we'll probably get into the whole electromagnetic spectrum. But visible light, when we talk about full spectrum light, we have There's the full spectrum, which could include UV, which is invisible, and infrared, which is invisible. And then we have this very short little narrow portion, which is visible light, which is essentially all the colors of the rainbow. And so the yellow green 555 nanometers is right there in the middle. And there's a huge spike there where the eye actually is most receptive to it. And it's not as receptive to blue and red. So by attenuating this, so the neodymium actually attenuates the signal, it allows you to see other colors and all other mixtures of colors more vibrantly. So that's the kind of interesting point. And 555, just so listeners can get an idea, it's like a tennis ball yellow.
Okay.
I think that's the yellow-green color.
Yeah, it's almost
that our eyes are most sensitive to.
Yeah, so it's more yellow than a lime, really. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, it's
almost neon. Yeah.
Yeah, almost like a neon green. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so that's really interesting. So then, and so you mentioned incandescent bulbs. So originally incandescent bulbs, I think a lot of people in the biohacking space kind of think back on them fondly in a way.
Oh yeah. And still,
right? Like you still, like they're hard to find, right?
They are. Yeah. We offer them. They have so many amazing benefits. We call them the light vitamin or the ultimate light vitamin, just because not only do they have the full spectrum capability just out of the box, whether you get ours or just a regular run of the mill incandescent, it's going to have all the colors of the rainbow. It's also going to have a negligible amount of UVA, which doesn't cause any issues. UVA, interestingly enough, actually is part of the visible spectrum. So it actually is visible light. And it has infrared, which is what biohackers most love it for, is the great red light and the visible red light and the invisible infrared that it provides. And then ours, we have ours. So it's the technology's incandescent, and it passes through the glass, which has this neodymium element. So it takes that kind of what we think of as an incandescent bulb. Sometimes it has an amber or a yellow appearing light.
Yeah.
This is more white and vivid just because of the neodymium.
Okay. And we're still going to get to the neodymium, but before we do that, I just want to talk a little more about some of the issues around not great light. So, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to be all over the benefits of the right light and proper lighting, but what are the, let's talk a little bit and definitely, again, in the biohacking space or in the health optimization space, we obsess with sleep and, being exposed to the right light at the right time of day. So there's the sleep issue, and then there's the circadian cycle issue, which also is linked to sleep. But, we expound to people the value of getting out first thing in the morning and seeing natural light. Yeah. Right. So, so maybe we can talk a little bit about that aspect of light, because, again, like you get people living in high-rise buildings who, and especially over the last 2 years, like I don't know if there's anything that's come into your business about this, but over the last 2 years, you can imagine that people who lived in high rises, who were in lockdown or not able to get outside, without awareness around lack of exposure, the benefits of exposure to natural light in the middle of the winter, let's say, might not have stood out on their balcony or opened their windows. And so would have had this massive deficit of proper light exposure.
Yeah.
So maybe if you don't mind, we could talk a little bit about what that means and how that can show up for people.
Sure. Yeah. I guess, we'll start with the importance of getting sunlight every day and how people don't really think of it. The sunlight obviously provides everything that we need. So the UV, obviously the whole electromagnetic spectrum, which is invisible waves, visible as we spoke about, but the three that are most important for plant, animal, and human life are ultraviolet, so the UV, the visible, and then the infrared. And so those three portions are provided by sunlight. And the most important thing, and where it kind of comes into circadian rhythm and sleep schedules and things like that, is really just the presence of blue light. So people demonize blue light and they're like, oh my, it has blue light, I can't use it. And that's not true. You need blue light during the day, first thing in the morning. As you said, get outside, get some sunlight, because you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have that pure full spectrum blue light. And so we spoke about the rods and the cones, and there's a third photoreceptor in the retina of the eye that's doesn't have anything to do with forming vision or anything like that. It's an intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell. So what that means is, and it has something called melanopsin inside, which is just a photopigment, and its sole job is to pick up on the presence of blue light. So blue light, if we're looking on the visible spectrum, it starts at around 380 nanometers. It's like the farthest extension. So you have UV, which is invisible, then you get into the blue visible light, so 380 nanometers, and it just keeps going up the colors. So Roy G. Biv all the way up until you hit red light, and then infrared. So 380, around 480 or 500 is where we have this maximum absorption point for melanopsin and blue light. So the moment that our eyes, which are an extension of our brain and our hypothalamus, the moment that we pick up on that, it's a direct signal. Okay, we're going to decrease melatonin. Cortisol is going to come up in its place. And if we don't have that, that's where things like seasonal affective disorder during the winter, when we don't have that sunlight to entrain to, because just like anything else in nature, there's this concept of entrainment, which is our bodies are just an extension of nature. So we want to be in sync with it. So whatever the cycles are of the sunlight and nighttime and the sun going away, our bodies also want to, release hormones to keep us in sync. And if we don't have that, well, people get depressed because serotonin is also linked to the presence of. So why do you feel so amazing? You go outside on a sunny day, you have like a pep in your step, right? And then it's a cloudy day and you're feeling a little kind of, down in the dumps. It's all intricately linked. Everything is linked to sunlight and to also, I would argue, the colors that you see in, which is why our light bulbs in the home, while it's not bringing the UV, which you're going to need that outside. So this is not, a replacement for getting actual sunlight. It actually does enhance the interiors and everything and make you see better because of the contrast being increased. Just like you would outside. So there's this huge link between, the lighting that we choose and how it makes us feel indoors. And then of course the biological aspect of needing that blue light to keep us awake, to feel stimulated, to entrain to the circadian rhythm, and for our body to know that the moment there's that blue light, it's time to wake up, increase our heart rate, digestion's going to get going, things are going to get going, our body temperature increases. And the moments that actually decreases and, it's time for the sun to set, it's kind of the opposite. So now you want, and we don't have that indoors anymore. So that's the big thing. So indoors, you really, ultimately, you want to be mimicking what's happening outside. But many times it's not possible. We have these filters on our screens and on our phones now that are part of the operating system. You have the blue screen, the blue light filter.
Yeah.
But the same thing is with your lights. So that how bright the light is an indication to your brain of, whether there's light in the environment and the color of the light. So I love to use incandescents because, as we'd mentioned, they don't have much blue light, or they have a lot of red light.
Right.
So the red color and the infrared. There are some LEDs. I know that's sometimes not the best choice in the biohacking world, just because of the EMF that they could potentially produce.
Yeah.
But there are red LEDs that work for the same, reason, not having any blue light. So those are for nighttime. So basically nighttime, you don't want to have any blue light and you want to dim your lights. Something like a candle flicker, ultimately would be what you would want to get to. And during the day, you should have bright light. It gets you going in the morning. Get outside if you can. Otherwise, turn on your overheads. Have whiter light, like a whiter color temperature of light. So it appears almost bluer because it has more blue in the visible spectrum. Those are really the main points to feel like, okay, I'm kind of having my circadian rhythm more entrained with how nature would want it.
Right. And then, but in the first thing in the morning, at the sunrise, is there not also some red and infrared light as well? Like we kind of see that red infrared at the beginning and at the end of the day in many ways. Like I will, one of the other things I talk a lot about is avoiding sunglasses, ironically, during the day, right? Because, and I will also encourage my clients to get outside in the middle of the day, even if it's for a few minutes. Because the way I kind of, and this is, I'm sure, a gross oversimplification, but it's almost like you're allowing your brain to orient itself to the time of day based on the light that you're seeing. And you're just kind of keeping everything on track, right? So we see it first thing, like within that first hour after the sun comes up, we see it in the middle of the day. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, we're here. Check. And then by the end of the day, if it's possible to get out again closer to when the sun is setting, and, like kind of save the sunglasses for driving into the sun occasionally, like you're going to need them, right? Like they do have a purpose.
I agree. Yeah. They do have a purpose, but your eyes need that light. Like you can't be blocking the signal.
Yeah.
Then it still is absorbed into your skin, but that's a different pathway and it does something very different. It's not going to have the effect on the circadian rhythm as if it were coming into your eyes. And you actually mentioned something very interesting, which is the color of light. So as we know it changes during the day, right? It's more golden and red during the dawn and dusk, and bright and blue appearing during midday around noon. But it's all full spectrum light. So as you mentioned, infrared is always there, UV is always there. It's just what portions of the spectrum are being reflected more at that specific time or where we are.
Right.
But it's still always being produced and always visible. I mean, invisible, but still present.
Right. It's still a factor. What do you know? And I don't know if you know anything about this, because I know this is a bit of a contentious issue. For the longest time, we were telling people, there's photoreceptors on your skin. So your bedroom has to be pitch black, because if there's any light coming in from anywhere, and I mean, I operated with improper curtains for the longest time until I finally convinced my husband to, we needed to just spend some money and get some blackout blinds. And, we have a weird kind of window in an alcove that's round, like it was a total nightmare covering this thing. But then more recently, I've heard that there was a study that came out that said, no, there's not photoreceptors on the skin, or they don't influence our circadian cycle. Have you delved into that at all? Because I mean, obviously, like my room is super dark. I'm like, somebody says yes, somebody says no. Bottom line, science isn't settled. I'm going to err on the side of caution and just keep it dark.
Yeah. I do the same. I'm not so familiar with that. I have heard I had not seen that they had disproven that. The last I heard that it was, and it would make sense because other animals do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's disproven. My gut is it's disputed. Right. So you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the thing with so much of the science that we get exposed to, is that everybody who makes a discovery or does something in a lab is like, that's it. I found the answer. It turns out that they're full of crap and we're right. And then you're going to have the other camp going, no, not so much. And so it ends up being, a bit of a back and forth. So I'm not sure that it's settled just yet. I just remember hearing that there was some contention that maybe it wasn't as big a deal as some people, just as I've heard on another podcast not that long ago that, maybe blue light before bed doesn't have that big an impact on deep sleep. And I'm like, there's such an overwhelming amount of evidence that it does. And I don't know if you track your sleep much, but I do. And I do. Yeah. And I can see a difference. If I wear my blue blockers at night, then my deep sleep numbers generally reflect that.
Yeah. And even just sometimes if you don't have your blue light filter and you're doing some late night work.
Oh, I get a headache.
Yeah, but you feel the difference. You know,
Yeah.
you can't fall asleep. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't fall asleep. You know, I'm in New York City, so a lot of times you're out late and everyone has their lights on and they're blue.
Yeah.
You realize that you can't sleep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a
You
lot of
can't
people
shut
don't know
down.
that, you know, so you can't shut down. The body doesn't start producing or doesn't realize what time it is. And they think, oh, it's still, there's a lot of light,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of blue light, therefore it must be daytime. So let's continue on that, you know, on that path. You need to have that time to kind of decompress. Your body wants to kind of slowly kind of ramp up the production of melatonin, and it takes some time. You know,
Yeah.
it can't just be like, oh, it's whatever, let's say my bedtime's 10:30. It can't be like 10:25, I'm going to turn the lights off now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, these things happen in cycles, and melatonin production, I think, happens through the day. It's
Yes.
when it gets released and when the receptors are clear that it can start to do its thing for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, for sure. And I've noticed that ever since, although I don't have my house tricked out the way I need to, so maybe we'll have a talk about that when we're done with the podcast. I've reverted to just wearing blue light blockers. But I noticed that if I'm somewhere else or and it's at night and I don't have my blue light blockers with me, if I make the mistake of turning on a light late, I find it blinding. Like I've become almost hypersensitive to bright lights at night. It's quite amazing to me that we're not as tuned into it as we're not as like I don't know, we've kind of normalized it. And when you think about little kids or babies who get exposed to bright lights at night, and then we wonder why they're not settling or sleeping properly.
And why they're cranky.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that, just as we mentioned, or you mentioned at the very beginning, light is such a basic component of our lives, yet we don't really get it right.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly because not only do we have the biological, the physiological aspect of what light does to us, but also it's confusing. There's so many different types of light bulbs. There's so many different types of fixtures that you can find in a house. I mean, we speak to people all the time and they don't know even where to start.
Yeah.
You know, even the different shapes of light bulbs. You know, if you have the hi-hat floods in your ceiling, you know, you have to use a specific reflector flood bulb in there to get the most out of it. You wouldn't just put like a normal light bulb, yet a lot of people think that you can. And I don't blame them. I probably wouldn't know the difference if I wasn't involved in lighting. So there's so much we can talk about lighting design and that side of things. And then there's also, you know, the health and light aspect. So there is a lot to kind of deconstruct around lighting. So I really don't blame people.
Yeah. So for seasonal, so the issues that people deal with light, you know, the health issues that people often will deal with around light deficiency, let's say, you know, I mean, I know that there's one guy in the space, I think it's Matt Maluka, talks about the light diet, right?
Mm.
So we talk about a food diet, like what we eat. We talk about exercise, as you said earlier, but really there's almost should be a prescription for light as well
I
in
love
our
that.
lives.
Light diet. Yes, absolutely. And that's such a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people, you know, when it comes to lighting, it's how does the light make you feel? So at a specific moment, is there enough for what you're doing? Is there too little? Is the color correct? And yeah, I mean, it all comes down to how do you see things, right? Because I like to argue that how you see things and the world you see is really only as beautiful as the light that you're viewing it through. Because if it's not for light, we don't really see.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you know, what's interesting is I think there's that, you know, people refer to, and I think photographers are very familiar with this, is that golden hour at the end of the day. I know that we're at our cottage, like we have a lake house on the water. And there's a very particular time of day as the sun is going down, but long before it disappears over the horizon, it hits a certain place. And all of a sudden, the light is amazing. Like we look at you look into the forest and everything is just popped. And that's when you want to take your pictures. Like if there was ever a time of day to take pictures, it's that time of day. High noon turns out to be the worst because of all the blue, I guess, right?
I think it's mostly just the presence of all the colors.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just touched on something that's very important. It's like, how do you feel in that moment when you see that gorgeous landscape? That's one aspect of lighting. It's just, how does it make you feel, and what are you able to see, and the colors you're able to see, and the texture and everything, especially through a forest. All of a sudden you see that the leaves are kind of shiny, and it's just, it's really a miraculous thing. But most lighting just sucks, to just put it plainly. It's really not, most people don't know where to even start. But I would say start with the colors, not just the color temperature that you're seeing and whether there's blue light or not, but also how do colors appear and how well can you see? Because reading and just eyes is a huge thing when it comes to LEDs. A lot of people are concerned, or they say that they can't read as well. And sometimes a lot of it has to do with the flicker, that invisible flicker. But you really, those two components when it comes to lighting in the house are really important, so other than knowing the shape, it's the color, the eyes, how like clearly you can see, and how well and vividly you can see your interior.
Yeah, no, for sure. So actually you bring up a good point, nighttime reading. So my husband reads before bed every night, and I had to buy a special pillow to put over my head so that I could literally, he reads under this, and it's a cheap little fixture that he just loves from, well, I won't mention where it's from, but all it is, it's this tiny little, I guess it's an LED bulb. I imagine it's the kind of thing people would use in a torture chamber because it is so bright. And so and it's on this like little flexible thingy, and he pointed at his book and he claims this is the only way he could possibly read before bed. And I'm like, just get better glasses. So what would be, and I sit there and I go, okay, well, I'm not going to read before bed, because if that's my only option, I mean, yeah, I want to read a book, but I can't, like, it hurts my eyes literally to have that kind of light on. So what would, in your estimation, like what would be a better light for nighttime reading when before bed?
I just love that description, because I know that little
thing.
Yeah, with the clip.
Yeah.
I know they make one with a red light now. So maybe he's interested in that.
But is red light reading a thing? Like, can you read with red light? Because
I can, yeah.
He would argue, I can't see a damn thing. I'm just falling asleep. I'm like, well, that's the point. You want to fall asleep, but
yeah, tell him you're protecting the circadian rhythm, and that there's so much white light in that he's gonna get better sleep by using the red one.
Yeah,
I mean, there's that option. What I do is I just use one of our incandescents, like a low wattage incandescent, in my bedside table lamp. Yeah, that's really, I mean, one of the, like, an ultimate option that you can use. Low wattage, of course, just because you don't want to have bright light.
Right. So when you say low wattage, are you saying like 40 to 60 watts, or
even lower? 25?
Lower than that?
Yeah.
Sorry, 25?
Mm-hmm. Which are hard to find. I actually have one right here. This one it's like a candle bulb.
Like a candelabra one? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it has a regular medium base socket. So it goes into a regular lamp. And this one's 25 watts, which I find it's perfect for nighttime, for reading, You could use a 60 watt as well.
Yeah, but it's softer light in general. It's softer than that damn little spotlight thingy.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
I've come out of the bathroom a couple of times and it's like pointing out at me. It's blinding.
It's like a laser. I know. I've had one of those.
Yeah, it's awful. Okay, so let's talk about where people can start, because like I said, I think that this is a great conversation. And then people, frankly, even if you have an apartment, like if you start counting all the bulbs and the different fixtures in your apartment, it adds up really fast. And so are people supposed to change all the bulbs, or is there a solution where they can have certain lamps in a room that they only use at night and just avoid the overheads? Like, what would you?
I love this question. Yeah. Because it is overwhelming otherwise. I always tell people, if just kind of get the maximum dose that you can of good light when it's most important. So obviously at night, try maybe an incandescent or a red LED, especially in your bedroom. Like I would definitely start in your bedroom. If you have overheads and you don't want to kind of get involved with that and you're not sure, then just turn them off. You shouldn't even have them on during the day. It's very easy to just get little table lamps, floor lamps, whatever little fixtures that you need. And what I love about them is they're just so accessible. You don't have to get on a ladder to go and change a light bulb. You have them right there. You can just unscrew it, change the light bulb if you don't like it. So I would start there definitely, because that's going to help you determine what light helps you sleep the best. And then I would also say when you're working is another important time. So, in your office, same thing. Overheads during the day. So if you're working during the day, which I hope you are, and not at night, then you should have something that's a little bit whiter.
Okay.
Wider color temperature. So in the color, the Kelvin temperature scale, when you look at light bulbs, anything from around 4,000 to 5,000 is perfect. Not going to be super blue, which is kind of the blinding blue.
Yeah.
When you think of sunlight, it's about 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin. So it's going to have a lot of the blue light. But during daytime, when you're working, 4,000 to 5,000 or 5,500 is perfect. And then use something, like our Chromolux bulbs that enhance colors and reading. Use that on a desk just to enhance the space around you, because it improves how you feel. So you want to feel inspired. Like can't really see it now because it will start glaring everywhere, but I have my overheads, I have a lamp over there, I have a desk lamp over there, and one behind my main computer. If I don't have that light, I can't work.
No kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I could, but it's not, I don't feel as inspired,
Right. And so these are incandescent bulbs?
The ones I have 2 halogens and incandescent, and then overhead, I have some of our full spectrum fluorescents. So
okay, so so you just said something really interesting here. So you said halogens and incandescents. I would have thought both halogen and incandescent, not incandescents, fluorescent. The halogen and the fluorescent, to me, like fluorescent, I would have thought big fat no, like don't even go there. Right. And halogen's another one that, I guess because it's associated with very, very specific spectrums that tend to be too bright or too white. And it's not, I guess I'm in a world where I've been really confused by this, because in a world where you can find incandescence, it's like, what are you supposed to do? And fluorescence, I associate fluorescence with the old strip fluorescent that's above in the ceiling in the basement of my cottage that flicker and like they buzz and they do all kinds of weird things.
Yeah. So it is those fluorescents. We have the ones that I'm using. The flickering and the buzzing, interestingly, doesn't come from the light bulb. It comes from the ballast.
Okay. So it's the power source. Yeah.
It's the power source.
Yeah.
The bulb itself, I have ones that are, I think they're actually 3,700 Kelvin. So that's why it doesn't look very white and glaring, because I couldn't work under that either.
Right.
So it depends. And actually halogen is a very great light source. A lot of people are scared of them because I think you think of car headlights. And it's essentially, when you think of it in a light bulb form, which I don't have one here, but I mean, this is an incandescent, but the glass shell is one part of the light bulb. And then inside here, we have the incandescent filament. In a halogen, it's basically, you have like another light bulb in there.
Right.
But because it's protected by this shell, you can handle it. So I know a lot of people ask, can I touch a halogen light bulb, or with the oils on my fingers?
Yes.
That's a burn. It's only if you touch the actual
bulb inside.
Exactly. So a car headlamp, for example, you don't want to touch those because that's just an exposed halogen. When it's in like a typical lamp, then that's fine. It's protected by the glass envelope.
And what's the quality of light we're getting from the halogen?
Yeah, so it's essentially, halogen is just an enhanced incandescent.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, which it's not very well known, but it's actually, you have the incandescent filament. So you have that same filament, and all it is, it's encapsulated in quartz, which is what you see as a little extra light bulb. And there's a halogen gas inside. And so what it does is it does make it a little bit bluer, but it's not. So I would say like ours, for example, is 4200 Kelvin.
Okay.
Or 4100, around there. It's very beautiful. It's very pure. It's not blue at all. And it's, I think the best part is most incandescents will fade over time. So as they burn out, they get kind of dark. I don't know if you remember, like on the incandescents, they start to blacken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so it's ending, you know, the life is, or the lifespan's almost over. With halogens, what it is as it burns, it's redeposited. So all the ions are redeposited onto the filament rather than onto the glass shell.
I see.
So it just allows it to burn a little bit brighter and more efficiently and keep the bulb clear.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's no fear with the halogens at all.
Okay, I'm going to have to pause. Okay. So about coming back to halogens, so continuing on the halogens, so is there a particular time of day for particular bulbs?
Yeah. Yes. So that's where this perfect segue.
Yeah.
So where we went into night times and kind of changing out the fixtures there, whether it's a red LED or an incandescent, because they have low blue light output naturally. During the day, halogen is a perfect option because it's going to be just a bluer version of the incandescent. So it's still going to have that amazing infrared energy. And infrared, of course, is so a lot of people get upset, oh, these bulbs get very hot. But that heat isn't really wasted energy. It's infrared, which is used by us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, except we have lampshades and all this stuff over them. So I guess you don't get the benefit at that point.
Yes, you can. I can't show it here, but that's why I use lamps without lampshades. So they're actually directional. They're like little floodlights.
Okay.
With regular bulbs in. So I highly recommend using something like that rather than just a standard table lamp with a shade around it, which is an amazing option as well, just because you're going to diffuse the light and just for general purposes, it's amazing. But when you're working, and that's when we had mentioned to have those, I like to have all the benefits of the light on me.
So I have one here, which I can probably show you. Oof, I don't know if you can see it, but it's one of these desk lamps.
Oh, perfect.
And it's got a bulb inside it.
So something like that would be perfect.
It's a halogen, actually.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah.
So see when it's shining on you, that you're still getting all that benefit of the infrared.
Okay, I'm going to do that because, you know, you can never have enough infrared in your life. There we go.
And enough lights, you know, doesn't it just feel better to have that light on? And
it does. And I'm also more lit up. It was
yeah. Sometimes you walk into people's homes and it's very dark and they don't even.
My parents' house is the worst. I know.
And they don't think of it. And that's
like, why are you sitting in the dark?
Exactly. Why are you sitting in the dark? It's daytime. Go outside. You're going to feel better.
Yeah.
Bring it inside, you know, it's not nighttime yet. But that's the thing, I think. And that's my whole goal, is to really reintroduce the idea of lighting in the home and making it feel better. And it should not be dark inside during the day.
So can we talk a bit about LEDs? Because I've been left with the impression that LEDs are bad. And I'm guessing that it's more nuanced than LEDs are bad.
Everything is nuanced, right?
I know. And I mean, I know these things about food and supplementations, you know, like fat is bad. No, fat's not bad. I mean, some fats are bad, some fats are good. It depends on the person. But let's talk a little bit about it. Because, you know, at this point, like it's a lot easier to find an LED than it is to find anything else. I mean, halogens, you can find pretty easily. And I now feel better about my halogen bulbs. I'm going to run out and get a bunch of these fixtures. But let's talk a bit about LEDs. And it was interesting what you said also about the fluorescent, in that, well, actually it wasn't the bulb that was the problem. It's the power supply. That's the issue.
Yes.
And so I guess my kitchen light is not an LED problem as much as it's a fixture problem.
if that's the one that's flickering, right?
Yeah.
It's, well, the LEDs are interesting because those do flicker.
They do flicker. Okay.
They do flicker. You can get ones if they run, I believe it's on DC voltage rather than AC. If it's on direct current, which is DC, then it's not going to be, essentially what the flicker is, it's turning on and off very quickly.
Yeah. Which is AC.
Which is AC
voltage,
which is our normal line voltage. So you can find ones that will not flicker. The thing that is tricky, well, we'll kind of get into the whole nuance part. LEDs are great because you can do so much with them. They're just a bunch of diodes that are creating visible light. And you can change the color of the diodes to get different colors and different spectra. Where it gets dangerous, or not dangerous, but murky, is that they're really used, or I would say their forte, of course, is their energy efficiency. So they don't use a lot of energy. You know, you can have, and it also gets confusing because some people will be like, well, this says 100 watts. Is that 100 watt? Is that what it's drawing from the power source? You know, and it's not. It's actually maybe 8 watts. It's giving light of 100.
Yeah. That's so the IKEA bulbs. That's that IKEA bulb thing where, you know, you go to IKEA and they're like, it's 1,000 watts, but it's only 8 or 12 watts or
any bulb now. Yeah. Like any LED will say, they're essentially nutrition facts, but for the bulbs, it's the lighting facts.
Yeah.
So it will give you how long it should last, the lumens, which is just the brightness of the bulb, the wattage is just how much it draws, how much energy it draws. So usually 100 watt equivalent, so 100 watt equivalent being of an incandescent, like an old fashioned bulb. So for example, if I have this bulb here and it says 60 watts, this is a 60 watt incandescent. It gives a light of 60 and it is 60 watts.
Right.
An LED version, this one's frosted. This is an LED. You can almost see the diodes inside.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent to a 60 watt, but it only uses 8 watts.
Huh. Okay. So it's much more energy efficient.
It's much more energy efficient.
And then in terms of light quality?
So light quality, yeah, that's where, you know, so we do have ours. This is using our glass. So it mitigates a lot of the issues that you would get normally with kind of murky appearing light. Sometimes LEDs you can't really distinguish between colors or contrast. It's hard to read under. I mean, that's the biggest complaint we get from our customers, which is why they're going away from LED. They feel they can't read under it. It hurts their eyes. It's hard to focus. And the light quality is just kind of dull, I guess would be the best way to put it. You know, so with our glass, or the neodymium that we put in our glass, what it does is it basically just eliminates that factor. You're still getting, of course, the LED factor. So there is some EMF that's produced. So some people that are extremely sensitive to EMF, it's not going to be a great option for them.
Yeah.
You know, halogen and incandescents are the best, and even low voltage. So halogens are great. Just going back to halogens for a second, because you can get, we were talking about line voltage, which is 120, or usually in the US, 120 volts. That's what's coming into the home. If you drop that to 12 volts, which is what some track lighting systems, they will drop it to 12 volts. So you can use a halogen in there that produces quite a lot of light, and it's very pure light, but it's running on lower voltage, so there's less EMF.
Oh, nice. Okay. So when you say they drop the voltage, there's a mechanism there's a transformer in the track lighting that basically siphons the voltage coming in.
Yes.
Like a dam, sort of.
Exactly. It's a low voltage track.
Okay.
So that's a lot of people. I wasn't aware of that until we had some customers letting us know that they do use, because usually the thing is, I mentioned halogens, people are resistant because they don't know about halogens. I explain and they're like, oh, okay. Then you get some people that I am expecting they're going to be resistant. And then they said, oh no, I use low voltage track halogens just because, you know, I had an EMF specialist and they recommended that I install these.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah. So that's another great thing with halogens as well.
And actually, I want to say something because a lot of people will be listening to this podcast. They won't see the bulb that you just held up. So if people are watching on YouTube, you've obviously seen the bulb. But for people who are listening, the other bulb you were holding, it was kind of like a bluey tint, the halogen. Yeah, that one on in your left hand, my right, your left. So for people listening, the bulb that Talia is holding here it's really interesting looking. It's kind of frosted, but it almost has a purpley hue to it. And then inside the actual halogen bulb, I guess it looks like it might be yellow or orange.
Yeah, so that's the LED.
That's the LED, sorry.
So and then this one in my right hand is, so what you mentioned, the frosted.
Yeah.
All the LEDs are coming in frosted glass.
Oh, so that's an LED. Okay, so I got super confused. Okay, so I've never seen an LED, first of all, that had the shape of a regular, what I consider to be a regular bulb. I always associate LEDs with little bitty bulbs or.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So that's basically just inside.
Yeah, so the LED's inside, and then you've recreated the normal bulb shape that we know, that we're more familiar with, even from incandescent days. But so now the color of the glass, does that have to do with the neodymium?
It does.
So we're going to talk about neodymium now, because I'm basically dying of curiosity. I want to know what it is and what it does.
Okay, so this, and just also, this is a clear one. This is incandescent, so you can see inside. Yeah. But it comes in a frosted version. Okay. So it's basically going to look like this, but it's a filament inside. So the technology is the first layer, the layer of what is producing the light, whether it's an incandescent filament, a halogen burner, it's called a halogen burner, or an LED diode. Okay. So that's step one. Step two is the shape of the bulb. So this is an A19. This is like your standard household lamp. This is one step larger, A21. So they're both normal.
So it's just a bigger bulb. Okay.
Yeah. A21. So this is like upside down pear shape. This is a candelabra. So it's called B10. Same thing. It's a clear using our glass, incandescent on the inside. The base is a normal screw base. This one is also. So
that's that floodlight you were mentioning earlier. Yeah. So that's for the pot lights, like that use those. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a small one. This is R25. So it has our frosted, these also come in frosted or clear glass. So this portion is frosted, so you can't see inside. We also have one where it's clear and you can see the filament inside. That's also using our glass. So that's just the shapes. Right. So neodymium is an earth element. So it is very commonly found in the Earth's crust. It's basically like copper. It's a metallic element that you find. And in its oxidized form, it turns this beautiful color. And the very interesting thing is what it does to colors. It enhances colors, but it itself, right now you see it's purple. Yeah. Kind
of like a lavendery, like a
lavender. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people say almost kind of pink, but it's more lavender. Yeah. You can't really see here because all the light is the same source. If you were to go under a fluorescent light, this would look blue. So it does change color. You can even look online. They make beautiful glass sculptures using this type of glass just because it is a beautiful color and it changes color. So I always find that to be very fascinating. And a lot of people actually call in, they're like, I don't know if this is your bulb. It looks blue. And on the website, it looks purple. And it's just because of the light you're using, the way that it's actually refracting and what it's reflecting back to you. Okay. So neodymium has this absorption band that we spoke about in the very beginning at 555 nanometers, which is the yellow green or tennis ball yellow. And we use it just because, it's used in so many things. It has many applications. You'll find them in magnets. I think it's used, not the oxidized version. So it won't look in its natural form. It just looks like a metal. In its oxidized form, it has this beautiful lilac.
So are you kind of crushing the neodymium and incorporating it into the glass?
Yes. So it's, most light bulbs are using silica glass. So with the normal glass, you just add the neodymium in there. Okay. So it's a special formula of incorporating the compound into the glass.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so it's going to reflect the light differently as the light is produced in the bulb. It's going to deliver the light through different,
it's like a filter
way. Yeah, it's like a filter.
A filter. Or an amplifier in the case of colors. So it's filtering out the yellow, which we're so sensitive to. But since we're so sensitive, just by absorbing a little bit, you're still able to see it, of course, the yellow, and you're able to see all the ones that we're not able to see so well, the blues and the reds, even.
Oh, because we're blinded by the yellow. Almost.
That's
like
a good
there's
way
an
of
overabundance of yellow.
There's an overabundance. It's like that signal is so high.
Yeah.
The other ones are kind of pushed down.
Okay.
So by pulling the yellow down, you can see the other colors, and it's hard to see, but let's see, I always use blue. Like I have a blue pen here. I'm going to put the light on it, and it's probably hard to tell, but it should look a little bit more vibrant. It's hard to tell on the video.
Yeah, it's harder to tell on video, I think. Yeah.
But the whole purpose is, I mean, I see it as right here, I'm under the fluorescence. It's not having the same effect as when I hold it underneath. Actually, wow, it's crazy. I don't often do this, but the difference when you look under, so even if you're to look under your halogen, you know, halogens on their own are great. So that's what I was saying at the very beginning. Incandescence and halogen, they will have this beautiful light, but yours is a little bit more yellow than what ours is because of the neodymium.
Right. So so you apply so you use neodymium in the halogen bulb and also in the LED?
In all the bulbs that we use.
All the bulbs that you do.
So any bulb that's Chromolux, which is our brand, is a neodymium glass shell.
And so that's the piece of it that makes it a full spectrum bulb.
That is the part that makes it a full spectrum in terms of the colors being really vibrant. Yes.
Okay. So then you would want these bulbs in your house wherever you can position them. Really, this is like a daytime bulb, and it's giving you access to like basically a more vibrant kind of like beautiful photograph, as opposed to it being a little light or a little heavy on the yellows or a little, whatever the case, like it just balances out your lights, the colors in your home kind of deal.
It's essentially like Photoshop for real life.
Nice.
That's how I was trying to explain it once to someone. They're like, oh, like Photoshop.
Yeah.
It is, you know, if you ever work with these editing softwares, and you can, even on your phone, you can kind of enhance your photo. You have the photo and then you have the vivid version.
Right.
And essentially, this is like, these bulbs create the vivid version of what your interior looks like. And that's why it makes you feel better, because it's just the intricate link between what things look like and how you feel.
And so for people who suffer from SAD, using this kind of bulb inside would be hugely beneficial, I would think, because it's going to give you a rich, more of that, like you're having a more balanced diet, if you will, of light.
Yes.
Than under,
and that's the key. You just said, like a balanced diet. You need a balanced light spectrum.
Yeah.
It's not natural to have only one portion or this portion. Which is what we're doing with visible light. We're forgetting the entire spectrum. We're just picking and choosing what we want out of it, which in some scenarios is fine. But I would say for optimal well-being, you want to have
food. It's like food, right? You adopt these crazy diets where you're only eating one type of food for a really long time, and you end up creating imbalances in your body quite often. So in Finland, for example, when they're living in eternal night, but basically, so they somehow figured out that this type of bulb would be beneficial to people to have them using them during the day, what's supposed to be the day. So that, because basically you could say that people in Finland are living in an environment that is not well suited to humans. It's
quite interesting. Yeah, you would say it's not, because we need to have those, you know, night, day, diurnal system.
You need the cues. You
need those cues. And it's probably why they were the ones to use these in lab scenarios. And we weren't.
Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Exactly. So, but we should all be, I mean, what it does is so beautiful. That was the purpose of Chromolux and why we brought it. to people and to homes, to really the difference that you feel and how you see. And actually, it's been recommended. We didn't talk about the vision, but vision is a huge part. If you can't see well, or if you feel like your eyes are straining, you feel tired.
Yes.
You think clearly. Especially, that's why I recommended, if you're working, have these bulbs on, because while your screen, you can't really fix what's happening on your computer screen. If you're writing anything or typing, or just your general eyes and the status of your eyes during the day, to keep them feeling fresh, of course, you want to close your eyes, look away from the screen, things like that. But the neodymium actually enhances the contrast. So they've done studies on people using regular incandescents and our incandescents, and found that visual acuity scores were higher. So visual acuity is basically, cover one eye, can you read these lines, as an eye doctor, how crisp and how clearly you can see things. It actually, our bulbs will increase visual acuity because of pulling down that yellow and enhancing. So it just rebalances things in a way more similar. We get a lot of painters and artists that use these bulbs in their studio. The reason that you can see the colors better. So when you're mixing, it's very similar to, you see a lot of people painting outdoors.
Yeah.
They do that because they can see everything.
Right. And light filtered through a window doesn't give you the same light. You're losing bits and pieces. Or is it the same, or? It's
the same. The only thing that you might not be getting is the UV, but that's invisible. So in terms of the visible light, it is the same.
Oh, you are getting it. Okay.
Yeah. So, but some people don't have windows, and I feel for them.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So, all right. So we have, so the neodymium really is an enhancer of what we're going to see, of light. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. So does this reduce eye strain to some degree?
Yes, 100%.
Because you were just talking about it's great in your work environment, if you're painting, if you're,
yes, it reduces eye strain for the reason that it enhances contrast. So if you open up a book, a regular book, a paperback, and look at
back in the old days,
back in those old days, right? The black text on the white page, it almost has a 3D effect where it's lifting off of the page.
Wow. Versus
a regular bulb. So because of the contrast, it makes things crispy. If that's a good way to which is why we say it's like Photoshop. Because in Photoshop, what do? We enhance the saturation of colors and we enhance the contrast.
Interesting. So for nighttime reading, you could maybe get away with a lower wattage, like less, not as blinding a light, let's say.
Yeah. That's why I recommended this little guy. It's lower wattage and it's using our glass, so you're able to see better, even though it's a low light condition. You still have this glass that enables you to see things under better contrast. So it's low light, but it's high contrast.
I love that. Okay, so that was the candelabra bulb. So basically, the magic is in that purple glass.
Basically, yeah, because this is just incandescence.
Yeah.
Filaments, right?
It's the purple glass that really makes the difference here.
Yeah, I mean, we do have, it's a well constructed. We have a different type. It's a brushed chrome socket, so it prevents corrosion. We have two, what are they called? The things that hold the filament in place. Versus one, so it enhances the life of the bulb. But really, just the main thing of what makes a Chromolux bulb Chromolux is the neodymium in the glass. I
love it. Okay, well, now we know what neodymium is, guys. The word of the day is neodymium. And if you can spell that, you get extra bonus points. Okay, and then save the red lights. And at some point, a red light is a red light is a red light. I mean, I know that if I wear my dark blue blockers at night, again, I've talked about this, people are probably sick of hearing me say this, but I fall asleep in front of the TV. Like I literally can't stay awake. It's cut out the blue light, which is exactly what you want.
That's what you want. Yeah.
It's super annoying because you get to watch the opening credits and the closing credits of so many shows and movies. Occasionally you wake up in the middle and see something and then you fall right back asleep again. But, and that is really that is really all people should need to know. Right. And that is that if that's the effect of bringing red into your life and it puts you to sleep, then clearly this is what we need to be doing at night so that we get better sleep.
Yes. And the opposite in the morning.
Yes, and the opposite in the morning to help us wake up. So, and then I'm also a huge fan, and I don't know if your company gets into this at all, but I'm a huge fan of red light night lights. I think there's a huge market for this. I don't think there's nearly enough of them out in the market, but I used to have this. That's why I'm looking for that teeny tiny bulb. And if you can help me find a teeny tiny bulb, you win the prize, even a white one, because I have this funny little night light that plugs into the wall. That's actually a little salt lamp. And
I like that. Yeah.
And so even with a low watt white bulb, it's amazing the difference between that and turning on the light in the washroom. And it burnt out. Like all my bulbs are burning out these days. Apparently I've been prepping to speak with you. But again, like red light, it never made sense to me having these night lights that are white light. Why not have like a red or a rose or something in the reds that is just so much more gentle on the system and allows us not to kill ourselves or stub our toes or whatever.
And this is perhaps off topic, but I just thought of something I recently did. If you have a salt lamp that doesn't have a bulb inside, which I might think it might be a halogen, like just a small one, you could take your husband's night lamp and shine it on. I did this recently because my Himalayan lamp recently also, it burnt out, and I'm trying to look for the little bulb.
Oh, you're looking for the bulb too?
Okay. For the bulb too. So let me know if you find it.
No, I think you guys need to start making one.
I know, I was thinking of it, but then it would be just a regular bulb. But you can take that LED and point it like just
at the place.
Yes, and it starts glowing.
I know, but then you have the LED on and it's super bright. So
no, it diffuses it.
Oh, you shine it through the salt.
Yes. You just place it against it, and then it's still a light source, but it's the same thing. It's just glowing like a normal salt lamp would.
Yeah, I'm going with the solution where Lumiram starts making those little bitty bulbs. I don't care if you make them incandescent, LED, halogen, any which way you want. Because I even went on Amazon and ordered a whole, because I'm like, oh my God, I found little tiny red bulbs. I was so excited. So I bought a whole box. I have 25 wrong size red bulbs. Oh. I don't know what to do with them. I'm like, I don't want to throw them away. I don't know who to donate them to. They're just sitting in my bedroom now for a year.
And that's the thing with the shapes of bulbs, right? People don't know. So we're actually, we don't have it up live on our site, but we do have a bunch of blog posts. And that's the next one that will be posted is a whole article, going through every shape and every fixture that you would find in a normal modern home.
Yeah.
To put in there, because we get those questions all the time.
And the size of the socket, right? Like it's which I guess is the E15, E21 business also. Does that refer to the size of the socket?
Yeah. So
like the base?
Yeah. E26 is this regular one.
Right.
You'll see called medium base. So that's just a standard socket.
Screw in. Yeah. That's just a screw in. And what about the ones that have the little pegs?
Okay. That's probably the GU10. It's like a twist.
Yeah.
Twist and lock.
Yeah. That's what I have in the ceiling in my kitchen.
Those are GU10.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll go through all of those in the blog post if people are interested. But basically it's just the medium is the regular. So in flood bulbs like this is, or a regular A shape standard household bulb for your desk lamp.
Upside down. That's the upside down pair, guys.
The upside down pair. Yeah. They all have that regular screw base.
Okay.
But then you have candelabra bulbs. So basically this bulb, but this is a regular screw base, the E26 medium, but then it also comes in the little skinny version, which is the E12 candelabra. So a lot of people are familiar with those.
Yeah.
Most people are familiar with the E26 and E12.
Okay.
And the U10, as you mentioned, which is the twist and lock.
The twisty one. It's interesting. I wonder if I've actually, and are the Lumiram bulbs available in like regular stores, or is it the kind of thing that you would just order from your site?
I would suggest ordering it from our site just because you find all the bulbs there. And otherwise you do find them in some health food stores have them.
Okay, so you wouldn't find them like at not Costco, at whatchamacallit, Lowe's or Home Depot.
You wouldn't, no.
Okay.
You'd only find them in specialty health food type grocers. Some yoga studios carry them. So
Interesting.
it's specialized holistic
Yeah, lighting.
sensors.
Yeah. So that's so interesting, right? That you actually have to seek out special bulbs.
Yes. Oh, and
For
some art
health.
stores actually. For
And
the
of
artists.
course, for the painters.
Yes.
That
So
makes
they are
sense.
sold in health food stores and art supply stores. So big ones like Dick Blick or what's the other one? I can't think of it now. The main two that you would find on Jerry's Artarama. That's what it
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Okay. Or there's your website, which we will get to in a minute.
Or there's our website, which has everything. Mhm.
Okay. So now, is there anything we didn't cover? Anything we didn't talk about we wanted to talk about? I'm looking for my notes I started off with here.
I think so. We went over neodymium finally, earth elements that's in our glass, what it does.
Oh, I know. Well, there was a talk. We were talking about light therapy. We had written down light therapy to talk about. Maybe before we finish, we should talk a little bit about light therapy and what that is and how that helps people.
Sure. Yeah. And it's interesting because now if you look on, or I recently Googled, I was looking something up and you type in light therapy, you get red light therapy, and you don't really get anything about what we're talking about, which is SAD light therapy.
Yeah.
Which is
seasonal affective disorder light therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. Like winter blues.
Yeah.
Which is when you don't get enough of the sunlight during the day. And why a lot of us feel kind of sluggish, a little bit lethargic during the winter months. It's really because if we're not getting that light, the blue light input, our bodies just don't function the same way. You need to be entrained to this light and dark signal. So light therapy in the form of these specialized boxes. I don't have one on my desk right now, but normally I do. Now that it's summer, I don't need it as much.
So you're talking about like that. I've seen them, like it's like a screen almost, and it lights from the back.
Yeah, like almost like an iPad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a pad, and so that uses LEDs in it, and they're cool because you can change the color temperature, so you can have them whiter or a little bit warmer. You can change the intensity and how bright the light is. They also come in boxes. So we have these old school, they almost look like suitcases, like a briefcase, metal briefcase that is outfitted with full spectrum fluorescents. But not the ones that I have over here. These are kind of more red. They would have the really bright white ones that are, I think they're using 5,500 or 5,000 Kelvin in color temperature. And that's, we didn't really touch on fluorescents, but fluorescents are also wonderful for light therapy. Or if you're working in an office that has overheads and you wanted to switch to something that we use, a full spectrum fluorescent, it's going to be much better than your run-of-the-mill one. Just the colors and the color rendering index and things like that, how you see colors. But yes, during the day, and especially for SAD therapy and light therapy, the light is intense. So you don't use it for more than 30 minutes. And it has to be, of course, I've seen things online where it says you can have your eyes closed as long as it's touching your skin. It's not the same thing, where it gets confusing. You need to have your eyes open to entrain, your circadian rhythm.
To get that information in. Yeah.
You need that light to come in through the eyes. So your eyes should be open, but you don't want to be staring directly at it. So let's say you're working on a computer. I would have it off to my side, so the light is coming in peripherally to my open eyes, of course. 30 minutes. I mean, most people, you should try and see. The cool thing is you will feel a response. So even if I were to turn one on right now, I would feel like I just had a shot of espresso.
Oh,
you start to feel like a little bit energized. When you have too much, you start to feel agitated. That's okay. Yeah, it's your way of knowing like, okay, it's too much. It's extremely bright. It's around 10,000 lux. So lux is just a measure of brightness in terms of how close or how bright it is and how close it is to you. Right. So 10,000 is like a sunny day.
Yeah.
Sunny day.
It's like light calories.
It is. That's a good way of putting it. It's like the calories. Yes. So it's having this extreme effect. And so during the winter, that's when most people use it. Right. Even if you don't have full-blown SAD, most of us could definitely use some light first thing in the morning. Don't use it at night. So if you're working late in the office and it's about 5 p.m., don't turn it on.
No.
It's going to keep you on. It's going to keep you up,
Yeah, yeah.
It's definitely first thing, in the morning, if you have your coffee, turn it on. I mentioned that I don't use it now. I normally do, even though it's summer or the beginning of summer. I would have it on just to kind of wake me up a little.
Just to start your day.
Just to start my day. Yeah.
Okay. Instead of having that extra coffee.
Which I would have anyway, but.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, we can talk about that some other day. Okay. So basically in terms of what people would feel from light therapy of that sort, it would be better energy, more kind of like sharper thinking, like all the things we would associate with that extra shot of coffee or whatever the case may be, like better mental performance, basically.
Better mental performance and a better sleep schedule.
And mood.
And mood, of course. Yes. So of course, that's why we said don't turn it on at night, because it would keep you up. But if it's on in the morning, it's in training you to your body thinks, oh, it's daytime.
Okay.
And it kind of goes from there. The whole schedule of your day goes from there.
Yeah. I used to use this little device a couple of years ago, and I actually have the new version, which I haven't even taken out of the box, but I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called the Human Charger.
I've not heard of that. No.
So it's also from Finland, interestingly enough, because of course this is where they need it. And instead of it being a full panel, it's kind of like a portable version, if you will. And the first model that they had looked like a little tiny, it almost looked like a tiny little original iPod, like the silver ones, the super tiny, like a nano.
Little ones, yes.
The little ones.
Yeah.
And it's got 2 earbuds that come out of it. And on the end of each earbud, there's this crazy bright light. And you put it in your ears, and there are photoreceptors that through the ear canal
I've seen
that are accessible.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
I have.
And I know they're not, I know it's not approved for SAD in Canada. I don't know about the US, but in Europe, it is an approved medical grade device for treating SAD. But it's also really helpful when you're trying to kick jet lag, because
that's also another use we didn't go into.
Yeah, exactly. You can use it to reset your circadian clock when you come back. Exactly. Like people coming back from Europe, in the part of the world where we are, for example, by 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're starting to fade. So they would start, and in the case of that, in case of the Human Charger, it's like 10 minutes an hour for a few hours leading into the evening, just to kind of keep you up, kind of doing exactly what you said not to do, so that you can delay going to bed and get yourself back on a regular schedule.
Yes.
More quickly.
Which you would want in the case of training yourself back from jet lag.
Yeah. And then in the morning again. Yeah.
In the morning again. Yes. And it's interesting that it goes in the ears. It's all the same thing, right? The eyes are basically just an extension of, the ears and the brain. It's all the same. Goes to the same place.
Exactly. Well, it's interesting that you have those photoreceptors in your ears. I mean, you don't shine the headphones into your eyes for sure. Like, I think it would, you would like drill holes into your eyes, but I always found it pretty interesting. Anyway, it's, when you're not sitting at your desk, it's a solution also, I think, to, it can be helpful. But I've definitely seen those iPad looking things, and I almost bought one this winter, and I'm now kicking myself for not doing it, but they'll come back next year, or I'll find one online.
Yeah. And the great thing is they're portable. And even if you don't use it for SAD purposes, sometimes I just shine it against a wall and it's an extra light source.
Yeah. No kidding. It would have come in handy right now when I had no light in my office.
Exactly.
Right about now. Okay. Well, I now think that we've covered all the things we said we were going to cover. Is there anything we left out? Like, going back to the issue of, how do I approach this in my house? Maybe I guess the least overwhelming way to go about it might be to say, okay, I'm going to deal with the rooms that I use at those specific times of day, and then using supplemental lighting instead of maybe doing that thing where you're trying to address every single bulb in your house, so that you can supplement the lighting instead of start over.
Exactly. I would start with the fixtures that you have easy access to. So that's why if you don't have desk lamps, I highly recommend that you get some, just because it will make your life so much easier. And you can play around with your lighting more easily. I would definitely learn on more on the shapes and things like that, the more you get into it, the more interesting it gets. And you feel like, oh, I have control over my environment.
Yeah.
It's empowering to feel like this basic concept, lighting, which most of us don't know anything about. When you it's empowering to feel that, oh, I understand where things should go and what shape to use and how it uses electricity. I always like to know how things work. You know, I wouldn't drive a car without really knowing the very basic idea of what's happening.
Right.
Because it's a, you know, it's a big, heavy machinery. You want to know what's going on. Lighting is such a big part of our life. You should probably know a little bit about what's going on. So I would highly recommend or urge people to kind of feel more interested. Hopefully this conversation is opening their eyes to the possibilities of what lighting can do, not just biologically and physiology, you know, how it makes us feel, but also how it makes us think.
Yeah.
And the big hold that it has on us, right? Lighting really does control us. So you really want to make it work the best that it can for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I love that. And, you know, it's funny. I have a friend, I'm sitting here thinking, I have a girlfriend who's an interior, she's a designer, and she basically designs homes from scratch. And I'm like, I got to get her connected to you guys, because imagine the opportunity of starting from scratch in a home and being able to engineer the lighting in the home as it needs to be right out of the gate, and have options for red lighting in the bedrooms for nighttime, and have options for even in the kitchen. If you think about it, having dimmer light availability of dimmer light later in the evening, so that you're not turning on those, you know, we all have really bright lights in our kitchen typically, just so that we can see what we're doing and not amputate digits and things. But you know, when you're going in, somebody's going in for a glass of water at night because you forgot to bring it with you into your bedroom, you turn on those lights and it's pretty intense.
Yeah. So that's why dimmers are important, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Dimmers are important. And some people don't like dimmers because they
buzz.
They could buzz. Some do buzz. With incandescents and halogens, they don't actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only with LEDs, sometimes they do buzz because there has to be more, you have to think about the compatibility. Which is why I like filaments, because it's a gentle glowing. It's like it glows hotter, it glows cooler. So, but some people don't like the dimmers also because of the EMF.
Right.
So in that case, that's why I was mentioning using a low wattage bulb. I mean, that does mean that you do have to have different fixtures with different light bulbs in different rooms, which I know to some people is not the most convenient thing, but at least in the biohacking world, that's not an uncommon thing.
No. I mean, I have a good friend who in her living room, the only lighting at night would be red. And we would all fall asleep on the couch every
Someone
night.
comes over and they're like, what is this?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, everybody's half asleep. It's like, yeah, I got to go to bed. I'm out of here.
This is the room where I decompress, and this is the only light I have. Yeah. And that's the whole point. It's lighting really does have a say in how we feel and how we respond. So it shouldn't always be the same. It should always be, you know, changing.
Yeah. And so do you have any of those bulbs that change over the day, or?
We don't. Just
you
because,
don't.
Yeah, it's incorporating a lot of things that we don't really.
Electronics.
A lot of electronics. Yeah. So, you know, you have the Wi-Fi signal that's getting a signal to your phone to control it. I think they're very cool. And I definitely see purpose for it. I personally would not want to use something like that.
No, I don't need any more Wi-Fi in my life personally.
Yeah, I don't need any more of that. So I think lighting is a very simple, you know, concept, and I would like to keep it simple, at least in the home.
Yeah.
Where I'm trying to decompress. But it's still a very, very interesting concept. And that's what the whole thing with LEDs, and they're just you can do so much with them, including changing the color. Right. And, you know, you couldn't do that with an incandescent.
Right. Incandescent's a one-trick monkey. Right.
Exactly. You know, so it's really where your interests lie, but at least in this community and biohacking, that might not be our interest. Yeah. So, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. Nobody's adding Wi-Fi where they don't need it. And, and it's also a community that's open to chipping away at a problem. Right. So bringing in new elements as you're able to, and Yeah, I mean, these are all solvable problems at some level. So thank
And
you.
they're not problems, right? They're
No, these are solvable.
Yeah.
Like these are, I don't mean problems as in math problems, not problems as in problems. Maybe I used the wrong word.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So assuming I think we've kind of done a pretty good job covering most of what we were going to cover.
I would say so.
Anything you'd like to, okay. So any parting words, if you had one or two, maybe final things to leave people with?
Yeah, just what to reiterate what I mentioned before, we're so concerned with our nutrition and our hydration and movement. Lighting should be in another part of your daily checklist for wellness.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And yeah, no, I think this is great. So Talia, why don't you tell people where they can learn more? And
yeah, so we have a website called healthlighting.com. So that's health, HEALTH lighting.com, where you find all the Chromolux light bulbs that we spoke about. So every technology, incandescent, halogen, LED, fluorescence. If you have an office that you need to change out, our company is Lumiram. So if you have a store or you have a yoga studio or you're a chiropractor and you'd like to distribute these bulbs or use them in your practice, you can go to lumiram.com.
Okay. So that's the B2B arm of the business.
Exactly. So health lighting is if you want to purchase them, and it is all of our products, or all our Lumiram products.
Amazing. I love it. And then you have a blog on your website as well, right? So that's on the health lighting.
That's on health lighting. So if you're just anyone and you're interested in learning more about lighting, we have a lot of really great articles that break down health and light, and then more that are going to be coming out, like I mentioned, on the shapes and the fixtures, the more practical aspect of lighting.
I love it. That's amazing. And guys, we will have a discount code for you. We don't have it right at this minute because Talia's in the process of working that system out. So we'll have that for you in the show notes. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Talia. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I've learned tons.
Thank you, Natalie.
Okay. Thank you.